from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Welcome to today's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. In recent months, we've discussed with you from time to time about the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe, and out of that collapse has come many efforts to produce democratic societies in such countries as Hungary. We're very fortunate to have on our program today a man who has been there recently to assist in this development and creation of local government that is moving toward what is hoped to be democracy. Our guest is Frank Henderson, who's been on this program a number of times over the years and is a true expert about local government. He served for a number of years as mayor of Post Falls, Idaho, at a time when it was growing very rapidly and a lot of decisions were being made. And then he went to the county commission for Kootenai County, was elected a county commissioner again at a time when Kootenai County's experienced some of its greatest growth. And during his years on that commission, he also served as chair for a number of years. And from that experience, now that he's retired, he has been able to go and was invited to be in Hungary, and he was there to assist from mid-April through July the 3rd, 1993. And Frank has been gracious to come by today to discuss with us that experience in Hungary. And I should add, it will be going back very soon for another stay in Hungary to assist. Frank, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have our two regular panel members to join today in questioning our guest. First of all, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho. And next to her is Steve Shink, who is the Dean of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College. And I shall ask Janelle to commence the questioning.
Well, Mr. Henderson, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I know we're going to enjoy this. It's a fascinating subject. You went as a part of the International Executive Service Corps. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization? Then I have a second part to that question, and the second part is a little bit about your specific project that you were working on. So first of all, what's the general organization, and secondly, the specific project?
The corporation is called the International Executive Service Corps. It's a nonprofit corporation located in Connecticut. It was started in 1964 by a group of United States CEOs who foresaw the need throughout the world for the U.S. to loan its technical expertise in government and in business and finance and in various disciplines. And they organized this effort at that time, and now it has enlarged that it's a major effort relied upon by many agencies, including the United States Agency for International Development. My trip to Eastern Europe and all of the public assistance programs there now are funded through U.S. aid through the State Department. So I was sent there to work with a group of 18 cities which had formed an association for their common good, and they wanted someone with experience in a democratic form of government to advise them on a long list of subjects, some of which I knew very little about. But one was to modernize the phone system, the other one was to help them secure service for natural gas, upgrade streets and roads, and the important ones that they were really concerned about, I was pleased that they had the concern, were environmental questions. How to dispose of solid waste properly, how to protect the quality of their drinking water, and how to do in the modern technology for wastewater treatment, which we call sewering here. And then in addition to those items, then economic development was the other thing that they wanted help on.
And I would take it that they were probably in quite an elementary stage compared to our government, our local governments.
Well, this area was they were in various stages. I was pleased and I was surprised to find that in almost every city I found competent people who were in office. For the most part, they're professionals. I found surgeons and dentists and other highly educated people in significant positions, and they were there because they had a commitment and a concern for their local public. So they were a committed group, and I was pleased to see that. I also found out that they were good managers and good planners. They had planned things. They knew what their cities needed, what their area needed. They all had the same problem, however. They didn't have money, and they had the only money they get is sent to them from the central government. There are no local taxes. Now, I should tell you the nature of the area I was in was agricultural. It was about 80 miles southeast of Budapest, and in a great plain, very prosperous farming country. But it had no industry, and some of the cities that may be prospering and be a little stronger economically, such as Budapest, that effect did not occur in this area. This was an agricultural economy, which was very difficult.
Steve Sheen.
Frank, there are certainly more important topics we need to get to, but it's always interesting to me to get a personal view and to learn a little bit more about where you were and what the conditions were like. Who'd you live with? How was your trip financed? Tell us what you can to just sort of paint a picture of us so we can envision what you went through.
Our trip, and say the other partner was my wife, on these projects, the International Executive Service Corps sends the spouse if the assignment is more than 4 weeks, and if the spouse will do volunteer work while he or she is in that country. The trip actually was paid through a grant from the State Department, which was given to IESC, this corporation. I am not paid. I'm a volunteer and pleased to do that, but they do pay all expenses. We were housed at a teacher's college, and we were told that we'd be housed in a dormitory. And frankly, before we went, we didn't know quite what that meant. We thought maybe there'd be a men's dorm over here and the women's dorm was over here, like when I went to college. But that's not true anymore. They had co-ed dorms, so we were able to live together over there. And the client, which was who were the cities, paid most of the meals, paid for the housing, and IESC, through their grant, paid the other expenses.
Did you eat with the teachers at the college or the students at the college in a dorm dining hall of some kind?
We did sometimes. The best fun was to be invited to a family's home, and many of the people did that. Many of the people with the cities are so pleased to have an American come and visit them. They were flattered. It surprised me. It made me feel good about our country. But we got to visit with 4 separate families on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and really get to know them very well. That was marvelous.
Well, one question, a little bit more to the point. What was the biggest problem you saw? And you mentioned money, but that just goes all across the landscape in terms of what you ran into. But in specific terms, what was the single most daunting problem you faced there?
It's unemployment. That's it. Combined with a high level of retired people in this agricultural area years ago, when the communists imposed their collective farming operation and took it away from the families. The kids left. You know, the tradition in the United States is the kids stay on a farm and goes through generations of one family. That didn't happen over there because as they made the collective farms, put in their kind of management over this big holding of property, the young people left to find opportunities in the cities. That's what happens. So now you have a predominantly older population in this agricultural area. And in almost every city, half the population were retired people on pensions.
Frank, I have the fortunate privilege on the program to let you talk about some things that you brought back from Hungary. and some of these things are left over from the days when they were communist, and we've all celebrated the collapse of that system, but it's also important to show our viewers some of the things they have. I'm going to hold up 3 items here over and let you explain, and this is the first thing that I have here. I'm going to put on my shoulder here and let you tell us what this is.
I discovered this in 2 cities. I saw it in a storage house, storage room, and it looked like scout equipment to me. I asked the translator about it, and she acquired it for me. Now, what you're holding up is a scout cap. We think of it as Boy Scouts. The Russians and the communists called it pioneers. The program was a little bit like Scouts, but the translator, who was a girl, said that it was for boys and girls, and it was almost wholly militaristic in the way it delivered its program. And their program was the communist doctrine.
Then the next item that I have here, I will hold up, if I get it held up right here, and let you tell us what this is.
Quickly, I'll tell you what that says on there for people who can't read it. It says Socialism Brigade on this handsome, nice red satin banner. I found this hanging in a closed-up factory, and its role was that could be displayed in a company where a chairman for socialism had been selected, and that chairman then gathered all the workers around once a day, and they sat down and talked about the merits of socialism. And it got so the tail wagged the dog, and pretty soon they were talking all day and nobody was working. And so it got to be a major problem. But that's the socialism brigade.
Okay, and then I have a third item here that we will get on camera. If I can get it turned the right way here.
Well, I had been a scoutmaster for so long, I thought I knew a scout flag when I saw it. That was a troop flag for the communist versions of scouts, which they called pioneers.
Thank you for bringing these with you. Janelle Burke.
I would like to talk a little bit about the economics of the country and the economics of Eastern Europe. In your estimation, is that something that's driving the unrest there at the present time?
Well, there's no question about it. They suddenly, after 40 years of command economy where the communist rulers just dictated everything, a person in a period where a person didn't have to have a creative thought, didn't have to have an innovative idea, was not responsible for the bottom line. They suddenly, in 1990, became free. And in that freedom, suddenly they didn't have the financial support from the central government. It was gone. They had to have businesses locally that employed people who paid taxes, who contributed to the community. And they did not have that then. For the most part, they still do not have it, and it is a very significant problem.
Was it a lack of expertise? Is it a lack of knowledge on their part? Or is it a lack of a mechanism? It's building blocks. It has to be built up from one piece to another.
It is. The entire infrastructure for economic development basically is not present yet. I want to say very quickly, the Hungarians are highly educated people. They are intelligent. They are hardworking. So my comments shouldn't be construed as being critical. But frankly, they do not know what to do in a free market competitive society because they were not brought up that way.
They haven't thought that way for you.
It wasn't taught in schools. They never knew that. But they were like sponges when I talked to them. They wanted every idea. I asked questions of a company, do you have a catalog of your products? Well, they don't have catalogs. They don't understand they have to have a catalog. Most of them didn't even have a business card. None of them had salesmen. And so I just had to start right at the basics to get them to bring their ideas together about their companies and how they could present their product line to potential buyers. It was exciting to do that. And I want to say again, they are very bright, they're highly educated, ambitious, intense desire to be free and independent.
What about local businesses that might serve the local population, like a grocery store?
There are grocery stores, and there are department stores where you can buy clothing and carpets and hardware and that sort of thing.
Is there a supply that is coming to those stores, or are they still in very short supply of the products?
No, in Hungary, food was in good supply. Not many choices of meat in our judgment, but they had pork and veal and chicken. They had a lot of that, very little beef. I could not buy hamburger when I was there.
But basically you can buy the product. So in terms of food and clothing, those sort of needs that we have, basic needs, those were met. It was the question of now getting out and providing some kind of industrial base that will provide economic support.
In this area, the most significant problem in the economy is agriculture, because that is the dominant portion of their agricultural economy locally. And they lost their markets in 1990 when there was a sudden freedom, and newly independent states to the east used to be their major markets. It's where they shipped all the wheat and all the barley. They manufactured hats, they manufactured shoes, and they sewed clothes together. All of a sudden, those markets aren't there. But the biggest portion of their dollars previously came from agriculture. And now, that's shrinking because they don't know how to sell what they produce.
And do they have modern production methods? Are they using tractors and their production?
Yes,
is
they were very well equipped. But these were huge farms. The largest one I think was 80,000 hectares. Well, that's over 160,000 acres.
Wow!
So that's huge.
So
they are well equipped. Right now, they are trying to return lands to the original owners prior to the Russian occupancy. And those are just 50-acre, 20-acre plots. And they're trying to return those, but that's causing a problem because as an agricultural unit, that's not economic. You cannot produce enough on that small acreage to make a living. So with the agriculture being sick, it's holding everything down.
Steve Sheen.
On the public sector side, Frank, what did you see? What kind of problems are they dealing with in terms of municipal and I want to say county government, but they're probably not organized that way. Whatever their layers of government are in Hungary.
Their layers are very similar to ours.
Are they?
They're the municipal structure, organizationally, very similar to ours. Functionally, very similar to ours. The differences where they get stressed is that there in Hungary, the law says that the cities also administer all of the schools. And so within the municipal government, you have, like the school board, and the city I'm going to go to has 1,000 employees. 550 of them are employed by the school system. So you see the mayor and the council, in addition to administering the typical municipal things, also doing the schools. I personally think that's a mistake. I personally think it would be done better if they split it off, elected an independent school board, but their constitution isn't written that way right now.
So that jumble of governmental responsibilities is one problem. What other problems did you see on the governmental level?
Just I don't know if it's a problem, but they have not totally learned how to use their freedoms. I saw, for instance, in the acquisition of their freedom, they got title to a lot of real estate. What was previously owned by the central government or the local Communist Party locally suddenly became in the title of the city. Well, this might be housing units, it could be a pavilion, it could be anything. Very commonly, they own the cemetery and they own the funeral homes. Well, they're continuing to run those as a government, and they don't understand. They could franchise that. They could sell it. They could lease it. They could generate income with good real estate asset management. And so these were the kinds of problems and issues we were discussing with them.
Before the show started in the studio, we were talking, and you also mentioned problems with, and you said on air that they are concerned about the environment. But before the show, you said that they have some very serious environmental problems they've got to solve.
Oh, yes, they do. Not all the cities were sewered. Some of them probably never will be because they're not large enough, and recognizing the expense of sewering, it just won't be done. But the most significant problem that I saw was solid waste disposal, which very poorly organized. This is flat agricultural land, and what I saw is wherever there was a depression, they decided that it'd be a place to throw the trash, and once in a while they go out and put some dirt on it. In the meantime, everything's blowing around, and it's pretty poor. And I saw two occasions where they were putting solid waste. City trucks were just backing up and dumping solid waste into a small lake, directly into the water. And it's uncontrolled. Car batteries go into it, crankcase oil, paint, and all the bad stuff. And in that one case, I remember 4 blocks away were the municipal wells for the city drinking water supply. So before I left, I was really pleased. This was one specific thing I could do. I had reported this with big capital letters, this problem. And I was asked to go by the U.S. Embassy, and I wrote an application for a feasibility study for an expert to go there to this area and recommend a form, a structure for solid waste disposal and a method of doing it that would protect the environment. See, the people there, the leaders there, they don't want to hurt the environment, but they just didn't know better and don't know better. So.
Frank, we had some guests on this program a couple of years ago. They'd been to what was the Soviet Union before its collapse, and they were very concerned that in this area about the environment, that some of the rivers and lakes have been lost, and some of that was because of nuclear radiation that had been dispersed into those. In the cases where you're talking about in Hungary, are those lakes all going to be saved, or some of them got to the point where it was too late?
These were very small lakes. This was, 5-10 acre lakes. Might be hard to save what I saw. On the other hand, maybe the pollution wasn't as bad as I feared that it was. I have heard promising stories, however, of what they're doing with the environment there. I have heard of significant improvement on certain of the rivers that flow through Hungary. Not total, but they're started. In a city where we lived, there was an American engineering company, environmental engineers. They were cleaning up an old chemical problem by a factory. And recently we know a firm from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is working in Czechoslovakia to clean up the smoke that goes out the stacks. Mostly that pollution, I believe, Tony, came from the stack smoke from burning soft coal. It's very soft coal.
Now that you've been there and that you're going back, report to our viewers about are a number of other people doing like what you're doing, going in to help, and are they beginning to create some willingness to establish private enterprise? What level of progress do you see, or what level of optimism do you have?
I have a good level of optimism. There were this year IESC will do approximately 1,000 projects like the one that I was on. And they do it all around the world: Africa, Sri Lanka, India, the Far East, and especially in the Eastern European area. Now, people do want to succeed. They do want to be independent. And I personally believe the most important assistance that the United States can give them is our technical expertise. Having been there and seeing their economy and where they are with it, they have, for instance, no banking system. The best they can have is for us to share our technical experiences with them. And so there are people like me, then there'll be other folks that go over. All of you would be qualified to go. You all have something to contribute. And to my mind, that is much more important than money. Right now, to think that money will help their economy, I believe, is foolish. I think it's like putting gasoline in the tank before the engine's installed in the automobile. I think we got to get the engine installed, and I am really confident in the Hungarian people. And one of the problems on economic development, this startled me because as Americans, we are so used to everything we have. Telephones. The average telephone service today in Hungary is 2 phones per 100 households. Where I was, it was not even close to that. I was in a city of 9,000 people, and if you want to call the mayor in that city, you have to call the post office, which has the only telephone in the city. The post office sends a runner to the city hall, and the mayor walks over to the post office, takes his phone call. Their ambition is to build that up to the European average of 19 phones per 19 per 100 houses, and to do that within the near future. And I saw some progress on that. But imagine the difficulty of starting a company there where you don't have a telephone, and what would we do without a fax machine? You see, we take all of that for granted. They need to learn how to jump all these hurdles.
So I hear you saying that even though there are a lot of companies might be interested in doing that, it may not be possible until there's certain infrastructure in place.
They're close. I saw they're close. I personally think there's a great opportunity for U.S. companies to go there with joint ventures. I can see that in agriculture. I could see it in manufacturing. We have several U.S. companies over there, big time. GE purchased 10 factories that manufacture fluorescent and incandescent light bulbs. That's working. The privatization program is working, and I see that as the move for the future.
Janelle Burke.
I want to ask something about the family situation there. Would both spouses work in an average Hungarian family?
The answer is absolutely. They need the money.
What kinds of things would they be doing?
They'd be clerks in a store, they'd be secretaries, the wife, the spouse, and the man would do anything. I met with people who were policemen, who were professional people, who were engineers, who were laborers. They'd do anything.
Now, what do the children do? Is there a daycare system when the children are not going to school, or do they generally go to school year-round for the most part?
No, they don't go year-round, but daycare, a little bit of that is solved by the way they do their schools there. Age 3 years of age, there is a nursery school paid for by the local municipal government, which is structured for education. It is marvelous, and we just couldn't believe what a nice, homey little rooms without being fancy or expensive were provided for these little children. But they started to teach them at that age, even foreign languages. We saw one little group of kids singing a song, walking around the room, singing a song in English. Now, they did it especially for us, but at that age, and English has now become one of the most popular second languages to take in school.
And so all those kinds of family types of things that they were doing would lend themselves then to the future. Do you think that their educational system is going to be solving a lot of these problems that are coming up, or not?
Absolutely. I think the educational system is way ahead of the economic problem. If they would add some courses in their curriculum on free enterprise and how to make a profit and that sort of thing, I think would be helpful to them. But their school system has, I didn't see any deficiencies. Their family units really, I think, is a strength of Hungary. We were absolutely impressed with the coherence and cohesiveness of a family unit. Mother and father, brothers and sisters, the respect for each other, the open show of affection for each other. We don't do that in the United States, and frankly, it was nice to see. That's one of their strongest family values, is the family unit. The second one is academic achievement. How well do you do in school? That is an absolute goal, almost universal. It just really impressed us how serious their students were. And the third one for family values was church. The Catholic Church is very dominant there, and it's a big part of their life.
Steve Sheen.
Frank, it sounds like they do have some things that are positive. They've got an educated workforce. The communications thing is a serious problem. What about roads, rail, air transportation?
Roads and rail were quite good. Matter of fact, I thought their transportation system was very efficient. For transportation, if I wanted to travel anywhere in Hungary, I could get on a bus or I could get on a train and transfer and go anywhere within that state. Air, this is where I believe there's a marvelous economic opportunity for an entrepreneur. There is only one commercial airport in the entire country of Hungary, that's in Budapest. And there's only one airport because the communists wouldn't permit other airports. Now, what they have all around the country is about 20 abandoned Russian military Air Force bases. Yeah, and some of them are right by industrial centers. And we just know from our experience that sooner or later, the Hungarian corporate executives are going to want to fly 100 miles, 120 miles, 150 miles instead of sitting on a train or a bus or a car and going down the road. That's a big opportunity.
Have I got time for one more quick question? Is the structure in place legally for U.S. investment in Hungary? Any hurdles in terms of owning property?
Oh, no. No, it's a very active program of solicitation, and if anyone was interested, I'd be glad to share the information. But they have a very attractive tax incentive program over there. There are many incentives made available to U.S. for a viable partnership.
Frank, another thing is, in the short time we have left, as these different Eastern European countries are looking to their future and a new vision, how is Hungary cooperating with the neighboring countries?
I really don't know. We were just, where we were located, it was less than 200 miles from where the war was in Yugoslavia, but it was not a subject of conversation. They were aware of the split. Slovakia split off from the Czech Republic, I think, while we were there. That was not a big issue. There is a lot of travel back and forth across those country borders. I think it's fairly compatible. I didn't see or hear about antagonism.
On that note, I have to bring our program to conclusion. Frank Henderson, on behalf of our panel and our staff, thank you for taking this time. You've been very informative. It's been a most informative program, and I know our viewers have enjoyed hearing about that. And good luck on your next trip.
Well, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you have found this most informative, and I'd like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time, and we'll discuss yet another subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Telemedia Services on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.